What is up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you by the Hockey News and presented by Sticks.com. I am your host, Emma Lingan. I am joined today by Karine Hains and Diandra Loux, and we are here talking about technically the Atlantic Division, but you know what? It's that time of the year in the hockey calendar where we have news breaking quite literally as we speak. So we're going to be a little all over the place today. So bear with us. But before we do get into all of the latest and greatest from around the NHL right now, do want to let you know we are brought to you by our friends at Sticks.com. Why break the bank on sticks when you can get pro level composite sticks without the pro price tag at Sticks.com? That's STIX.com. Head over there now and gear up. Okay, I mentioned literally news breaking as we speak. We just found out, thanks to Diandra and her handy Apple Watch, that Vladimir Tarasenko was traded to the Minnesota Wild by the Detroit Red Wings for future considerations. So, 33-year-old forward had 33 points, 11 goals, 22 assists in 80 games for the Red Wings this season. He's got 1 year left on his 2-year, $9.5 million contract. So that's $4.75 million AAV. Initial thoughts, since we are just hearing about this in real time. Diandra, I'll start with you since you broke the news for us. What do you think of this trade for Minnesota?
Yeah, no, I thought it was interesting. I think Detroit is, we talk about the Atlantic Division, and Detroit is one of those teams. I think they probably want to get younger and they need to get better, right? They want to get back to competing. And Tarasenko is one of those guys. He kind of hops around, right? That's what he does. I think Minnesota is obviously they were competitive in the playoffs at the end of last season. So I mean, initial thoughts. This isn't too surprising for me. Like we said, Tarasenko's kind of hopped around over the years, and Detroit, this is kind of that year, right? It's that ticking point, right, where they have no option but to get better. So I think Steve Yzerman's probably going to be really aggressive at free agency.
Karine, this kind of seems like a pretty stereotypical salary dump here for Detroit. Do you think they could have maybe gotten more than just future considerations for Tarasenko, or is this good enough just getting that salary off the books?
Well, I think at the stage of Tarasenko's career and what he's producing right now is probably all they could get if they were able to get something else. I'm sure Eisenman would have tried, but he's just glad to have the salary cap space, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is the latest breaking news. Before any more trades break, let's head over to Toronto first. Brad Treliving has managed to extend the best young player on that roster, Matthew Knies, for 6 years at 7.75 million AAV. This was a hot topic, of course. A lot of teams wondering if they were going to get this done. There were rumors that it was going to extend into the offer sheet stage with these negotiations to kind of put some pressure on the Leafs to get this done, but they got it done. So Knies, 22 years old. He had 29 goals this year, went from 35 points in his rookie season 2 years ago to now 58 points this past season. So big jump in a pretty small sample size. But at the end of the day, with the cap going up and all of that, Karine, I'll start with you this time. Do you think that this will end up being a bargain for the Leafs once the cap goes up?
Well, if he keeps trending upwards, well, definitely. But like you said, it's a really small sample, so it's kind of hard to, just go to that kind of contract based on one good year. So I'm a bit wary yet to say it's going to be a bargain. I don't really know the player enough to feel comfortable saying that. If it pays off, it's a good gamble, that's for sure. But that's the nature of the beast, isn't it? You don't know what you're going to get, especially with those young guys. But good luck to the Leafs.
Yeah, Deandra, what do you think? Are you surprised that this got done maybe before the offer sheet stage? Because I feel like a lot of people were maybe hoping for a little offer sheet drama with Matthew Knies.
I think there's always a lot of drama with Toronto. So people are always hoping for the most, but I think Matthew Knies, and I feel like I can speak to this just with the history between the Lightning and Toronto. And Matthew Knies for whatever reason, plays really well against the Lightning. He is one of those young up and coming guys that you want to keep on your team. And I think with Toronto, they're in an interesting situation, right? They're going to be losing Mitch Marner, John Tavares signed, but I think it seemed like Toronto was hoping they could maybe snag Sam Bennet, and they had all these hopes of who they were going to get. And Matthew Knies is there. That's a guy you want to keep. So I know a lot of people had a lot to say about, what he signed for, but he's young, and so his ceiling, I think, is pretty high, right? So you want to keep him and develop him into a player that will stay there, long term. So
yeah, I think this was a deal with Nyes that, if you're Toronto, you're not going to get him to stay on a bridge deal. And there are other teams that would have offered him more. So I think that Toronto's kind of backed into a corner there. They knew they had to do the long-term deal. Like you said, though, Diandra, always seems to be something with the Leafs. It's always something. So a little bit of drama never hurt anyone. Let's head down to Buffalo. There's been a lot of talk around the Sabres. Of course, they were able to trade JJ Peterka. That was one of the names that was, floating around in the rumors. Another one has been Bowen Byram, a defenseman. And now it's looking like maybe, at first it seemed like Peterka was the least likely to be traded, and Byram was more likely to be traded. But now Peterka has already been traded. So now there's more talk about, well, maybe now Byram might be staying. Karine, what do you think? What do you think is the likelihood that he stays on this roster now?
To be honest, I'm not sure, but I'm starting to think that, the Sabres sooner or later will have to start being able to keep some players. I mean, it's unbelievable to see the exodus out of there. I mean, year after year, it's the same thing. And I was talking about that with a friend, and he was like, "Well, I'm getting the feeling that the Sabres fan base, even though really, really loyal, is kind of getting a bit disconnected right now because they've had it with all that move and everything that's going on out of Buffalo. I hope the Sabres manage to keep him, but I'm not sure if he's, that keen on staying. Time will tell."
Yeah, Diandra, what do you think? Is obviously the Sabres are in this huge, very long playoff drought. And like Karine said, they have not been able to attract talent via free agency or trades. A lot of players having no move or no trade clauses in their contracts have prevented them from coming to Buffalo. So, yeah, what do you think with Byram now that they've already gotten rid of Peterka? What do you think happens with Byram?
I'm with you guys on Buffalo. It's hard to understand what the vision is with Buffalo. When they traded Peterka, I'm like, just trying to figure out, are you a team that wants to get better, or are you like, what's the vision here? So, I don't know. I was reading that St. Louis is a team that's actually interested in him. So I think that this is going to come down to what they're offered. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but I'm with you. It seems like Buffalo is in a it's very hard to figure out the direction that they're trying to go in. I look at a team like the Islanders, right? And it's very clear Matthew Darche comes in, makes moves in the draft, and he's going to be really active tomorrow. And you see the direction that they're trying to go in, but Buffalo's just not there yet. And like she said, with the fans, and I mean, it's got to be absolutely brutal. So it's hard to say what they're going to do tomorrow and if he's going to stay, but it seems like they're kind of in the place where if they got the right offer, I could also see him going.
Yeah, Byron's an interesting player, young, he's got a lot of promise, a lot of potential, high ceiling, but he does come with that pretty lengthy injury history that I think might make some teams balk at the idea of, shelling out a ton to acquire him. And with all of the head injuries he's had, especially, there's definitely carries a certain amount of risk there. So will be interesting to see what happens there in Buffalo. All right, let's move over to Ottawa. The Senators did secure their veteran forward, Claude Giroux. They got him on a 1-year extension. Base salary is $2 million, but very bonus heavy. He's got the potential to reach up to $4.75 million with bonuses on this deal. So again, considering his age, still very productive at this stage in his career. He put up 50 points last season, had 5 points in the playoffs, and 5 points in 6 games in the playoffs. Not too shabby either. So he can still definitely contribute at 37 years old. But Karine, do you think this is a good signing for Ottawa? Are we surprised that Giroux didn't explore other options in free agency, or was this kind of a foregone conclusion that he would end up there?
Well, to me, it was kind of obvious that he was going to stay. I mean, the way he's been talking and the information that's been leaked, I mean, he's comfortable there. His family's comfortable there. He's even gone as far as saying that he would consider a move to Montreal if he couldn't reach an agreement with Ottawa. So, that to me screams, I want to stay there. And if I can't stay there, I'll go as near as I can to the show. So, yeah, I wasn't shocked. And it's not rare either to have a French Canadian who's at the tail end of his career say, oh, I'd be interested in going to Montreal, and then ends up signing elsewhere. I mean, we've seen it with Briere, we've seen it with a lot of players before. I mean, Briere eventually came to Montreal, but yeah, by that stage it was much too late. But yeah, it was a good signing for the Senators. I feel it's fair for both sides.
Diandra, what do you think with this signing? And obviously, this is a team that, as I mentioned, playoff team this last year. They look to be trending in the right direction. How much do you think Giroux is going to be a part of that and keeping this team kind of trending in that direction?
Yeah, well, I think that there's a lot to that too, right? Ottawa seems to be moving in the right direction, and I think they got a little taste of success. They're, making it into the playoffs, and they're big, tough team, right? And they're moving in the right direction. So I think at that point in your career, and we've seen it in Tampa too with a lot of these guys, like that's where they want to, they're there, they want to stay there. If they living, if you're playing somewhere that you love to live, like that plays into it as well. So I think as Ottawa moves forward, right, and they're going to want to make it out of the first round this year, you want veteran guys like that on your team. And especially, I think playoff pedigree plays into it too. So now he's got that, right? He's got that under his belt. He's going to know, this is what we need to do to get to the next level. So I thought it was a good signing. And like you guys were saying, like where you live is so important. Guys want to stay where they're comfortable. So wasn't surprised by that, and happy to see that he decided to stay there. I think he probably could have gotten a little more money, elsewhere too.
Yeah, probably. But, this again, sort of in the twilight of his career here at 37 years old, he wants to be at home. But as I mentioned, still very productive and contributing to the team. So it's not just kind of a feel good signing for the Senators. I think it's actually going to, have results for them as well. All right. Well, let's head over to the Canadiens now. Karine, this is your domain here. We've got a few things to talk about with Montreal. They were busy on night one of the draft, just maybe not busy in the way that they were expected to be. They acquired and extended Noah Dobson over the weekend, but they've still got some decisions to make on the blue line. So they've got Mike Matheson, who's got 1 year left on his contract at $4.87 million. He's the oldest defenseman they have, which it's worth noting that he's only 31. So I think that says more about the average age of their roster than it does about Matheson. Obviously, very young team here in Montreal, but they're going to have some cap constraints coming into play eventually. Is Matheson a guy, in your opinion, Karine? Do you think that they should extend him, or do you think that it's probably about time to move on from him?
Well, it could go either way. I mean, when Kent Hughes was speaking after acquiring Dobson, he was actually like really excited to say that his top four could have, Hudson, Dobson, Madison, and Goulet. And he was saying you cannot never have too many puck moving defensemen. But Kent Hughes is the kind of guy who keeps his cards close to his chest. So, he's never going to say, yeah, one of them's expendable now. That's not going to happen. But I do know that Madison's interested in staying. He's spoken to Gorton and Hughes at the scouting combine in Buffalo about a possible extension. But back then, Dobson wasn't in the picture either. So it's hard to know where this is going to go for the Canadians. I mean, perhaps they're going to start the season with Matheson and then see where it goes if this young team is ready to, unload a veteran now. But I don't know if I'd be ready to move him. And like we were talking about Giroux earlier, Madison's actually home here. He's from Montreal. He's got a young family. He's comfortable here. So I can see why you would want to stick around. So that'll be interesting to follow as well.
Talking about how busy they were, again, maybe not in the way that people expected around the draft. Were you surprised at all, Karine, to see that the Canadiens traded their 2 picks for Noah Dobson in the first round? And then, of course, very busy the second day too. They traded up in the second round to get the second pick in the second round to get Alexander Zarovsky. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And to really kind of make some moves there. Were you surprised at how active they were, or was this kind of expected?
Maybe it was kind of expected because the Canadians, they've had some glaring needs, and we knew that the right-hand defenseman was going to be a target. I mean, I actually wrote about Dobson in early May as a potential target, so it wasn't like a surprise to me at all. And it wasn't really a surprise to scouting staff either. I mean, post-draft, Nick Bobrov and Martin Lapointe actually explained that not having your first round pick when you've studied all of those players all of that time is like not having to take the test and still getting an A+ because you landed Dobson. So they were quite pleased with that. And even more so because the guy they actually wanted in the first round was Zarovsky. I mean, that was the guy they wanted to go after, and they still got him in the second round. I mean, so it's win-win for them, really.
All right. Yeah. Definitely an exciting team to watch right now. I think Montreal, they're moving and shaking and definitely trending up in the right direction after being a playoff team this last year. For now, though, let's head over to Boston. The Bruins have been very busy with some signings and extensions. They signed Morgan Geekie to a 6-year, $33 million extension. That's $5.5 million AAV. He's 26 years old. He had career highs this year in goals, assists, points. So he had 57 points, including 33 goals and 24 assists over a career high 77 games for the Bruins this past season. So he primarily played on the wing on the Bruins top line with David Pastrnak and Hampus Lindholm this season. So do we think that he can maintain this kind of production and make this contract worthwhile? Diandra, I'll go to you with this one. Do you think that this is a good signing for Boston?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if Boston, what it looks like they're trying to do, right? They're trying to get what we can say, getting rid of your captain, Brad Marchand. Like, they're obviously trying to get younger and they need to get better. And he performed really well. Even after they went through all those changes at the trade deadline, he was still performing well. And this kind of goes back to those younger guys. Like you said, he's 26. So he's kind of right about to be at his prime. And, I think that's a guy that you want to lock down, and comes out to what, 5.5 million per year. And as the cap goes up, right, assuming that he does improve in the next couple of years, I think that deal's going to look really good. But again, it kind of goes back to what it looks like their vision is moving forward, and they want to get younger. That's a guy, that's a no-brainer for me. That's a guy that you keep.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see what Boston does here after obviously some moves that they made last year that maybe didn't sit well with the fan base, but may have needed to be done. Speaking of which, the Florida Panthers have re-signed Sam Bennet, 8 years for $8 million a year. Karine, what do you think? I think it was kind of maybe not surprising that he landed back in Florida, especially after the Conn Smythe and the Stanley Cup win there. What do you think about this contract for him? Do you think it's an overpay, considering that he's essentially a second line center at his ceiling? I mean, do you think that this is a fair contract for him and a good move for the Panthers?
Well, after two cup wins like that and winning the Conn Smythe, scoring so many goals, I mean, that guy may be a second line center, but he's money in the playoffs. I think he left some money on the table, but he's completely fine with that. I mean, Kent Hughes, as you know, is a former agent, and he was saying earlier this weekend that some players, once they've won once, they crave winning and they're willing to take less money if it means winning. And he was explaining that some players only realize that later in their career that they should be willing to take less to win, and they sometimes regret it. Good on Bennett. He's noticed. He knows what it is to win. He's in a good situation in Florida. Decided to stay, so props to him.
What do you think, Diandra? This is a guy that you've had to watch play quite a bit over the years in this rivalry between Tampa and Florida. How much do you think his playoff success has really kind of fueled this deal and his negotiations this offseason?
Yeah, well, like Corinne said, obviously, it's players want to stay where they're winning. And I also think that, the Panthers have created a culture that all of the players want to stay at, right? So they're willing to take a little bit less to keep going and keep adding to what they're doing. And also, I mean, Sam Bennett is a guy, and you can add Kachuk in there too, right? The Panthers have built their identity around the way that those guys play, and he makes such an impact on the team. He's kind of the center of it. So, I wasn't surprised that he stayed. Obviously, he could have gotten more money. Teams would give him some money to come over there, but it was kind of obvious. And then he also let us know right at the Stanley Cup parade that he was not leaving. So he wasn't leaving.
He certainly did. He made that very clear.
Yeah.
So yeah, may have lost some leverage there as far as
Yeah.
like Corinne said, leaving money on the table. That certainly could have been a part of it there. All right. Well, now that's a good segue. Let's talk about the Lightning, Diandra. Biggest news from this week was Conor Sheary terminated, mutual termination of his contract. He was limited to just 5 games with the Lightning. Spent the majority of last season in the minors because of salary cap constraints. He's 33 years old. He had 1 year left on his 3-year deal. He was going to make $2 million next season. Assuming he goes unclaimed here, he can become a restricted free agent or an unrestricted free agent, excuse me, tomorrow. Do you think that he'll get interest on the open market come July 1st?
I'm interested to see what happens with Conor Sheary. He had won a Stanley Cup, and he's a veteran. And I think when the Lightning originally signed him, they thought of him, playing on a line with Sidney Crosby and how that would work, playing next to Nikita Kucherov. And I totally understand the sentiment. And then when he got to Tampa, it just didn't work out. And sometimes that just happens, right? And so, yes, he has been in Syracuse in the AHL all last season, and kind of took on a very different role. Was very open about what that was like for him, but he really wanted to come back up. So I wasn't surprised by this. I think it's the best situation for both parties. And, he does have a lot of experience, and with the right players, I think that, he could have some success. He's still got some left in the tank. So, he's a smaller guy, but like I said, he played with Sidney Crosby right next to Sidney Crosby. So, in the right position, I think he could add some value to a team.
Well, another storyline, another name that's been coming up a lot around the Lightning of late is Isaac Howard. So Julien Brisebois had confirmed at the end of the season that their former first round pick, Isaac Howard, he's unlikely to sign with the organization. So ever since then, the Lightning have been looking for trade partners. And he has said recently that those trade talks are still ongoing with these potential trade partners, but they have yet to reach a deal that can work for both sides. So, Diandra, do you have some insight for us as to why the potential trade here might not be happening?
Yeah, I think the Isaac Howard situation is so fascinating for so many people. So yeah, I think Julian Breezeball was really honest about kind of where they're at with everything. He's been in constant communication with Isaac Howard's agent as recent as Friday, before the draft started. And so the issue right now is that, where Isaac Howard wants to go, maybe they don't have anything to offer the Lightning, or something to offer where the Lightning will improve, or it will benefit them. And then what the Lightning, what they want, Isaac Howard doesn't. So they're kind of at a standstill now. And it's, it's an interesting situation, because I think with the Lightning, I fully understand, they put a lot into his development over the years. And, they want to get, I would think like a first round pick would be what they're asking for. I don't know that for sure, but so they have, if nothing happens coming up here, they have all next season until next August, before he becomes a free agent. But it's an interesting situation, like I said, because both parties have to agree. And we know that Isaac Howard wants to play right off the bat. So they're going to have to find a willing trade partner that can offer them more than a second round pick.
Yeah, it's an interesting storyline for sure. I know I've been intrigued by it from afar, to see what happens there, especially with Brisbois coming out whenever it was, I guess around the trade deadline, when he said, I'd rather win hockey games than have a bunch of draft picks, and now the draft picks might be leaving too. So definitely interesting to see what's going on there. All right, want to wrap up the discussion today talking about something that has been speculated, has been rumored to be happening or maybe happening for literal years now. And I think we can all just breathe a sigh of relief. It's finally happened. John Gibson has been traded. So he is now a member of the Detroit Red Wings. He was dealt from the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for Peter Mrazek, a second round pick in 2027, and a fourth round pick in 2026. So again, this is a name that has been on or in the rumor mill for years, with teams looking for quality goaltending. Now he has finally been traded. So with the Red Wings, kind of needing that stability in net, they haven't had it for such a long time. Do you think, Karine, I'll ask you, do you think this could be the move or the piece that kind of pushes them over the hump into playoff contention? Because we were talking about earlier in the show about how this is kind of the year for Detroit. They need to prove something here. Do you think that getting Gibson and getting that stability in net is going to be the key?
Well, I think it's going to help for sure. But is that going to be the piece that pushes them over? I don't think they're there yet. I really don't. I'm not sure what it will take, but that can't be it, honestly. And um, personally, from like a fan standpoint, I was kind of hoping to see Gibson land in Edmonton because God knows they need good goaltending as well. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that was there yet.
Yeah, it was interesting. I feel like Gibson's name kept coming up, and it was always the same kind of teams that were connected. Teams like Edmonton, for example, teams like Carolina that needed goaltending. So Detroit was maybe a little bit of a left field pick for me. Diandra, what do you think of this trade? And for Detroit, how much closer does it get them to where they need to be?
Yeah, just like we talked about, at the start of the show, like Detroit is a team that has to get better, because the expectations were high for them and it just hasn't happened, right? So I think with Yzerman, this is probably, he knows, because he was in Tampa for a long time. Like having a good goaltender makes all the difference if you want to win. So they're going to need that piece. But I definitely think it helps. Just like Karine said, it helps, and I think they have a little more to go. I think Yzerman will probably be pretty busy tomorrow. I can expect him to make, I would think, some big moves, and they're a young team, right? So they're close, but I mean, they got a few more. But this is the baseline, right? You have to have good goaltending if you want to win. So it was a good move.
Yeah, well, gonna be busy. Now they've got the Tarasenko contract off the books. That can give them a little bit more wiggle room. So, yeah, we are about to head into the busiest day of the NHL calendar, and then it is going to essentially go silent for a month and a half. So, we are going to get our rest, get geared up for the start of free agency on July 1st. So, that is going to do it for today's episode of the Wraparound. I want to thank Stix.com again for sponsoring us. We are taking the day off for Canada Day on July 1st, but we will be back on Wednesday. So for Karine Hains and Diandra Loux, I'm Emma Lingan. This is the Wraparound, and we will see you on Wednesday.